Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Grassroots Racer. Before I get into this week's show, if you missed my last, some of my latest posts on Flipping Man Motorsports page, I visited my newest partner's hip pocket workwear Golden Square. If you live in the Bendigo area, you should definitely go check them out if you need some workwear. They've got a huge range of clothing, footwear. They also do embroidery or printing as well. So drop in and see David or Louise and the team, and they'll help you out. On to this week's episode of Grassroots Racer, I was lucky enough to speak to this guest in person. He generously showed me his cars, although he is most well known for his involvement in speedboat racing. He's also won Australian titles in both powerboat racing and water ski racing, and he does jet ski racing commentary, and he has his own podcast. So to find out more, join me for a chat with David Bishop. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Grassroots Racer. Today here I've got David Bishop here, and we're going to talk about his career and his amazing story. So, where did it all begin for you, mate?
Well, thanks for having me, Ed. I didn't think anyone would be too interested, mate, but I was glad for the phone call. So, where did it all start for me? I guess as a kid growing up, my dad had cars.
Yeah.
And he was a bank manager actually, and he used to fix cars for people just on the side to get a little bit of extra money, and then he used to build his own cars. He liked restoring cars, and probably in the late 80s he decided he wanted to go racing. His cousin that he grew up with actually was an engineer for Connaught Racing in Europe. That was a funny story in itself. He went over to Europe he's an engineer, and he got a job, and in those days he had a brand new TCMG, and he put it on the ship, sent it over to England. Got on the ship 6 weeks later, he got there and there was no job. The job had dried up when he got there. So he looked through the paper and there was a job for Connaught Racing as a race engineer, and that's what he did. So the car connection came from that. He came back. Obviously my dad had a passion for it, and then Dad bought some little race cars in the early 80s, and then I was lucky enough to be able to drive them. And I did that, for probably through my teens and into my early to mid 20s. But the boat bug bit me pretty hard. So my dad had boats as well, but just ski boats, nothing serious. And we used to ski out here at Lake Eppalock where we live. And so the boat thing, I went to a boat race, just was hooked. I just thought, oh wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And from then on, decided with one of my good mates, Bruce Selleck, we decided we'd go ski racing, water ski racing. And that was in 1993, and we put a boat together and went up to Sydney Bridge to Bridge and did a few races, and started very low level. It was a lot of good fun, a lot of looseness. The boat broke down a lot, and learnt a lot, through that time. And the ski racing thing just grew and grew from there. Right to the point of my last race was at the World Championships in Vichy in France, in that boat behind us there. So. But so it kind of got big and out of control. Not out of control, but it got very serious, which I loved. Anyone, you yourself, mate, you probably want to drive out a supercar. You want to race a Formula One car, and I wanted to be at the top of that sport. And Formula 2 was a class that I was in, which is an international category, and I just, you want to be the best. And so to get to a World Championship level, win a Southern 80 in that category, we were lucky enough, we won 5 Australian Championships. To get to that level was good, but it also brought expectation just on yourself. And by the time I was done in France, and I had a crash over there and broke my leg, unfortunately. The reality was I was kind of done with it. And so bought a little Datsun race car, and then poor old dad passed away in 2019, so I've sort of had to grab a couple of his cars while I could, and one of them was a little Austin 7 that I used to race as a kid. So I've got that car now, which is really cool, to have that and keep it in the family and still campaign it. We've been doing a little bit of racing around the place, which has been good.
Yeah. Well, do you want to have a quick look at the car?
Do we ever? Don't fall off the chair, mate.
Yeah. What's with the number 156? Is that just the...
Well, the 156 is actually because I raced it down at the hill climb at Haunted Hills a couple of weeks ago, and my number's normally 56 and it was already taken. So 56 was my boat number as well, so that's why I run with 56. But so you know how it goes. Sometimes you can't have your own number because someone else has snuck in. And I'll tell you what, that's just black tape that I put on there, and it actually does look like a 156. So This little Datsun Stanza that I bought 5 or 6 years ago now, I suppose. I was still ski racing at the time, but my first car was a Stanza.
Yeah, right.
My first road car, and this sort of came up, and I was looking for something to do and something to play with, and it was already, all the hard work was done. I mean, it's a bit of a roughie, but it's a race car, so you know, some can be a little bit rough, but all the hard work on it was done. I've just tinkered with it and refined it and played with it, and I'm only doing hill climbs, you know, regularity, relays and stuff like that in it. I don't really want to race it per se, because that whole first corner thing where you guys all want to crash into each other, I'm not really into that. So just hill climbs, you know, track days, and these regularity events, which have been a really lot of fun. And the other thing I really like about them is the people. There's not a lot of egos in them, because everyone's just racing little cheap cars, and you know, whereas the boat racing became a little bit.
Yeah, it gets a bit expensive.
Yeah, and you know, and I loved your interview with Danny Timewell, who's a very good mate of mine.
Yeah.
Raced against Danny in the boat for years and years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he ended up in the top category with a big twin turbo boat. I could only afford an outboard, but I raced against him in outboards, and Danny's a ripper bloke, and he'd tell you the same thing. You know, at the top end, it starts to get hard work, you know, so this has just been a lot of fun.
Yeah, he's actually doing really well at the minute. Last time out at the State Series, he got his first win in the new car, and I believe it might have been a round win too, or a round podium, so he done really well.
Yeah, but I've been and watched Danny a couple of times, and he's a good man. I went into his trailer down at Phillip Island, and he was cracking it because the car wasn't this and it wasn't that, and I just told him to drive properly. So, but he's a good bloke. So I love watching Danny go around. It's great. So the other one of yours I've loved is Brad Nankervis, another very good mate of mine. So yeah, you're doing a great job, mate. It's terrific.
Yeah, thank you. And so this thing obviously runs a fair amount these days. You still doing a little bit to it, or do you think it's at a stage where you're sort of like, well, not much needs to be done to it, and it's a pretty good car?
It's a good little car, but you always want to do stuff. I've actually got, this is only a little L1600, and you probably see it's got a single Delorto carburetor on it. It's a good little engine, but I've got a 2-litre engine with twin Webbers, which I'm building the Webbers over on the bench here at the moment for that. So I want to get this one perfect. We've actually got a problem with the camshaft at the moment, so that's why you can see the breather's off and the rock cover's actually not bolted down. But we're pulling that apart, we're sliding the camshaft out of it and putting a new cam in it. But so there's always something to do. And you know, I probably would like to do something later down the track with the diff in the car. It's a lock diff. It's not bad, but I've got a limited slip one there for it. And you're always just tinkering. Oh, that's part of the fun of it, isn't it? Just, you know, playing around with the cars. And I love driving them, and I love driving them more than I love working on them.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that one.
Yeah. So this other one behind us, mate, is my dad's Austin 7.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting car, because this was actually built by a guy named, you may have heard of, Gary Cooper, who built Elfin racing cars.
Oh, right, yeah.
He started building this particular car early days before he was a car manufacturer as a special. Didn't really like it. It's got an Austin 7 engine and gearbox in it, and there was a 750 Formula class back in those days, it was early 50s. He put the car to the side because he wasn't really happy with the engine. He thought he could do something better, so he actually went and built another car on an Austin 7 chassis. It had a Morris engine in it, some later model running gear, some later model brakes, and he built that car and sent it, and they raced that. And then this little car was sitting in the corner, so they just finished it off. And then it got sold off. I'm not sure of its history straight after that, but it ended up with a couple of South Australian guys, David Davidson, and the Schultz brothers raced it for a long time. And then my dad bought it in 1988, and it's been in our family ever since. So it's 750 cc's. Well, it's actually 803. There's 750 standard. This is down to 803, which is nearly as big as a motorbike engine, almost. But it does have a supercharger on it, and it's, you know, it has in the past run 15-second quarter miles. So for a little engine and a very old car, it's actually quite fast.
Yeah, for such a little car.
Yeah, and you know you're alive. You know your eyes are bouncing in your head, and it's all happening. So, and it also holds the record at Mount Tarrangower for the category, and also at Rob Roy and Murnion as well. So it's quite a well-credentialed little car, and a lot of fun to drive. So it's great. And good to keep it in the family too.
Yeah. It really would be. And you still race it a lot these days, or are you quieting down with it?
Yeah, I only will do selected events. I probably do 4 or 5 events a year. So we do this historic Winton. We're going to do Rob Roy is next weekend, Rob Roy Revival. So this podcast will probably be out before that. So people, if they want to come down to Rob Roy Revival, get on board with that. It's good fun. And yeah, I'll do Tarrangower, which is up our way, and Eddington Springs, just bits and pieces like that. So yeah, nothing too serious because I'm still well involved in the boat world with all my commentary and all that stuff as well. So between the DATs and the MG that we got there that I like to take to the odd show every now and again, and the boats, it gets pretty busy. I'm not home very often. We struggle to catch up because of it.
And with the commentary, how did you really sort of get into that? Because you did a lot of racing, as we talked about just before. So how did the commentary become,
Yeah, well, it was through ski racing to start with initially. So there's a lake named Lake Cooper out just out behind Rochester, and it was just club racing. So anyone would just jump on the microphone and just do a bit. And turned out I had a lot to say. Like, who knew? So that just grew into me doing the river racing, the big classic races. I got asked. I was racing offshore boats at the time as well. I did some offshore powerboat racing, and I did some drag boat racing, circuit boat racing. Couldn't help myself. And just ended up, one of the guys, Tony Lowe in the Offshore Powerboat Club, actually asked me to come along and commentate an offshore race. They'd never done that before because traditionally offshore powerboats would leave St Kilda Marina, go out through Port Phillip Heads, and 2 hours later half of them would come back, the other half were broken down. So there wasn't a lot that you could commentate with offshore powerboat racing. So that grew from that. So they actually shrunk their sport so that they weren't disappearing off over the horizon, and brought them into basically large-scale circuit races in their big boats, which lended itself to being able to commentate the race. So we did that. That went really well, and I still do it to this day. And that was 25 years ago that we started doing that. And, we've done Speed Week, and I work with Wade Ornger, who's an absolute legend, and Matt Nolte as well. I've worked with Nolte, Nolte's a legend. If you listen to this, good on you, Nolte. But those guys who've out Supercar and all that sort of stuff now. It just grew. It grew into, and if you do a reasonable job at one race and someone else asks you to do another race, and it just grew into, but I've never ever done anything in car world, but it's a pretty competitive world, the car world, a lot of guys, a lot of commentators, and blokes like you that are a lot better than me, so, I can't compete.
Thank you. You do your boat commentary. Do you head out to the Southern 80 sometimes? Have they let you commentate out there before or go around and interview people? Yeah,
so I obviously was competing in the Southern 80 for 26 years straight. I competed, but over the last few years I've commentated it full time. So at the finish line I do the commentary for the 80, along with a couple of friends of mine, Richard Partington, Andrew Murphy. We've got Eddie Bosch-Janzik this year as well. But I'm sort of the anchor commentator, and I try and pull that rabble of blokes together and get it happening. It went from, I have commentated bits and pieces of the 80. When I was racing, I'll jump out of the boat and do a bit here or a bit there. But now that I'm sort of, I won't say retired, but semi-retired, I'm doing the whole thing. So Southern 80 in a couple of weeks actually. So I'll be there. You should come up for a look.
Yeah, I will come up for a look, and if I get the time, I'm not really sure. We've got a big race calendar this year. I think it's up to something like 16 races. So we haven't done that much since go-karting. And it's going to be exciting. But is there anyone who's looking really strong to win the Southern 80?
Yeah, look, actually, as we record this, it's the Robinvale 80, Robinvale Euston ski race at the moment, and I couldn't be in 2 places at once, so I'm not there. I was at another event yesterday, but it's, the top end of town's always very, very fine. The dash, I believe, yesterday was won by only 4/10 of a second.
Oh, wow.
So I haven't heard the result today. But, boats like Mistress, obviously Sapphire, Tim Pickford, last year's winner, he runs the Mercury product, the 1350 QC4V stuff. He also runs a custom engine as well. He's got a couple of boats that he runs. But, all those guys. It'll be tight. And the classes, I really enjoy the classes. I like the outboard stuff. The outboards are good because they're also evenly matched. It's stock class racing. So, you get guys with standard 300 horsepower engines. They don't have a power advantage, so they have to make it up everywhere they can in driving and skiing. And it'll be good. It'll be good fun, as it always is. Yeah.
And have you been up there to see what the conditions are going to be like?
I haven't been up there for a few weeks, but I have. Yeah, the boys told me the river's good now. Obviously, there's a lot of flooding, which affects the racetrack. So, I believe it's good. I believe the river's at a good level because the height of the river can make a lot of difference to the race lines you take.
Yeah.
It's not like going to Bathurst where the corners are the same every time.
Yeah.
Every time you go to Southern 80, they can be slightly different. A tree can have fallen in and changes the apex of the corner. I know Ian Tricker, one of the top drivers, who's a current record holder, has been already up at Echuca. He's down from the Gold Coast. So he's been in Echuca for a couple of weeks, just running the river, just driving up and down, marking trees and doing all that stuff. So yeah, it does change every time you do it. So it's a tricky game.
Yeah, I've heard that the camping sites won't be as good this year because of the flooding and stuff and the river rising and destroying the outer bit. So the camping's not going to be as good this year, or there's still some good spots?
Yeah, look, I still think there's plenty of good spots, mate. There might be some people that don't have their favourite spot that they can go to, but certainly you'll find somewhere. There's still plenty of places along the river you can camp, and it's, anywhere you get on the river, it's good spectating. So it's not, there's no drama. You might not be able to go to your favourite spot this year, but you'll find a spot, and there's plenty of spots. So it'll be good.
Yeah, and are you helping out anyone, or are you just going to be there for the fun?
Well, I'm doing the commentary, obviously. Look, I've got a couple of really good friends that race still. Jake Imperholzel, Tim Everest, that run boats that are basically the same as the boat that I ran, and I was sort of pretty involved in the development of that boat. And I give them a few tips where I think I can, but they're both very good operators, so they probably don't need my help too much. But if I can throw a propeller on for them or tow a trailer, just love being part of it. It's good.
And when you go out there, are you allowed to have a warm-up go, or are you allowed to go for a sighting lap, or just straight into it? Straight into it.
That's the challenge of it, mate. Yeah, it's you're sort of coming. I mean, obviously, as I said, someone like Ian's been up there running up and down the river, and you can do that. You can't run race lines though on and off weekend where it's not a race weekend because the river's not closed. So you've got social boats out there. You've got kids on kneeboards, mum and dad teaching their kids to ski, all that stuff. So you can go fast where you can go fast, but you've got to be very mindful that you come around the corner. You've got to be on your side of the river. So it's the same as a road, except for it's opposite in boats. We actually drive on the right-hand side in boats, but you have to stick to that right-hand side of the river, which means you can't apex your corners the way you're going to in a race where you use the whole river. When I go down the river, I'm ducking under trees, I'm apexing everything I can, trying to square off every corner. In boats, probably similar to cars, every time you're on the steering wheel, you're slowing the boat down.
Yeah.
Because it's drag. So you want to be going as straight as you can for as long as you can, because that's the most speed you get out of the boat. So it's a real challenge to... Sometimes you'll drive a different line to what you would maybe in a race car, just because you're trying to come in, get the turn done quickly, and then get the boat straight again as quick as you can. So you might drive an interesting line that you might not drive in a car. So it's a really good challenge. Yeah, it's good fun.
And what's, I guess, the best way to choose what prop you're going to use? Because you never know the conditions until you have a go. That's like at Robinville, you can go out there, you do the first bit, and then you can go, well, I think on the way back we should change this. But you can't do that because it's one run. So how would you sort of decide which would be best? Do you just go with gut feeling, or...?
Again, look, a lot of the guys that race the Southern 80 are racing all year round, and that's probably a misconception with a lot of people about ski racing on Southern 80, and they race once a year. They race nearly every weekend. There's point score racing. So most of the guys will know their boat really well, and they'll know what engine height they want to run, they'll know what propeller, but they're never ever satisfied by the same token. It's the same as any race car. You're always tweaking something, doing this, can I get a little bit more there, can I get a little bit more here? So the guys will have a propeller that they'll know will work, but that doesn't mean they're not going to try something different, and that's when you've got to go and practice.
And how would you sort of practice it? Are you only allowed to kind of cruise around there, or...?
You can go at full speed, so in terms of getting top speed out of the boat, there's plenty of straights that you can on weekends leading up to the race or during the year. But as I said, when you get to the corners, you've got to be cautious because you've got to be on your side of the river. You can't be running people off the river and running head on into people. So that's the way you test. The other thing, probably a lot of people from car wheel won't probably realise about boats is you've only got one gear. So if you go bigger in your propeller pitch and you get more top speed out of less RPM, that means you'll lose acceleration at the other end of the scale. So you've got to be really I always ran small props because I always wanted acceleration. I didn't have the top speed, but my top speed I got there a lot quicker. And you'd accelerate out the corners. And they're actually more drivable when you've got power under your foot. And you probably understand, like with your car, when you're accelerating, it's easier to control the car when you can put the power into it and drive it out of a corner. Boats are the same. If you've got power in them, you would have seen probably footage of boats spinning out at the race. That's generally because guys are backing off mid-corner or running the boats too level and letting the nose of the boat bite in. If you're on the power, it'll always hold its nose and it shouldn't spin out, in theory, hopefully.
In theory. And obviously it's going to be a huge weekend. Do you plan on going earlier in the week or do you plan on going up on the weekend?
Well, the beautiful thing about living in Bendigo, mate, is it's 50 minutes that way. So I'm just going to be heading up Friday night. Fortunately, I've got a good mate, Andrew Murphy, who's going to do all the corporate stuff on Friday for me so I can do my day job. So I'll be there, you know, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Saturday morning, ready to go for the Baker's Blitz.
And it's going to be exciting, so if anyone out there is watching, I might pop up. We've just got to see our plans. But yeah, obviously it's going to be a great weekend of racing and can't wait for it.
You're welcome in the commentary box. Yeah, no dramas at all, mate. Come in, you can give us your take on what you think about ski racing from a non-ski racer's point of view.
Right, yeah, I'll pop over.
That sounds good.
But with the racing this weekend at Newcastle, what do you think's going on there with the supercar guys?
I haven't had a chance to watch too much of it yet. I think Gizzy won yesterday, did he not?
He got disqualified.
So there you go, that's how much I've seen. So he did cross the line first and got
He crossed the line first.
That won't make him happy, will it?
And then it was Feeney and Waters, and both Red Bull cars got disqualified, so Waters got the win.
Really? For technical?
Yes, they had a driving. So you know how they've got the cooler on the passenger side? They had an additional one on the driver's side, so they deemed it illegal because they didn't request for it.
Oh dear,
So,
okay. Yeah, no, the Camaro Mustang thing, I hope it takes off because it is our premier category in Australia, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's what we love to watch. So the cars look fantastic, I reckon.
They do.
I love them. I'm neither either, but if anything, I'm probably leaning a little bit forward. But those Camaros look real, don't they? Tough as nails.
Definitely. But I do think they have a little bit of an advantage over the Mustang, they were saying. But I guess it's something we just got to look out for and watch along.
It'll be development, mate. You know, they'll go through, and I'm sure if they find something that, you know, one car's a lot stronger in one area than the other, they'll pull them back or give the other car something to make them competitive in that area. So that's just R&D, isn't it? It's becoming more about drivers these days, I think, the sport, which is probably a good thing. You know, it's about the best drivers who hopefully win the championship, not the guy with the best car or the most money. But in motorsport, it's very hard to achieve sometimes. So yeah.
Well, I guess we should get back to some of your racing. Why not? So, in terms of podcasts, you do have your own. Do you find it hard to get the guests on the show and ask them questions?
Not really find it hard to get them on. I find most people's favourite topic is themselves, so you know that's always good. And look, I tend to go for older people because I just like getting the stories and people that have been there and done it. You know, I should probably start doing some youngies as well. But yeah, look, it's interesting. And you and I were just talking off the camera about you know, some people you can't get much out of them, and so I tend to run with I find the term "tell me about this." So it seems to work really well. You know, if you say to someone, tell me about your car, generally off they'll go, you know, or tell me about that race or that crash or, you know, that guy, you know, if you run with the whole tell me about him, because you're trying to always avoid those one-word answers, aren't you?
Yeah. And with a guy like you who's so experienced, you've got a lot of stories because you've been involved around the, you know, the four-wheel motorsport world and the boating, so you definitely have a lot of stories.
You try and say I'm old, don't you?
No. Well, yeah.
I am old. That's
Experience.
all right, I am old. Experience. We'll run with that. Yeah, there you go.
And you've definitely got some good stories, like Let's Embarrass Bradley and Curvis. You've probably got one about him.
Bradley and Curvis, well, what a ripper bloke, and they're very quiet, beautiful family, the Curvis family. And Brad's a great mate of mine, and his very first time that we ever took him up to Sydney, we took him up to Wiseman's Ferry. He's going to cringe when I tell this story, but because they don't They don't drink, they don't swear, they don't do much, wrong, the Nankas boys, which I have utmost respect for. But he was only about 20, I guess, and we took him up there with a group of rowdy powerboat racers, and he raced the Tiger Cub boat up there at Wiseman's, and we took him to the Wiseman's Ferry pub, and he won the points for drunkest man alive that night. So I still don't think he's recovered.
Yeah, yesterday it was just me and him at the shop, because obviously the other boys, Leo and Rowan, were up at Robinvale. Not sure what they're doing, but I think they were there helping out, making sure everyone's boats are running good.
Yep.
So yeah, we were at the shop yesterday, just trying to get as much work done as possible. But I did say to him, I was like, tomorrow I'm going to interview Davo. I asked him if he's got any stories, but he didn't say anything. So,
Really? Really? Yeah. Well, that's I don't know. He'd have a bit of dirt on me, I reckon, but we'll leave it at that. Yeah. Well, and what you're saying about Leo, his dad, and Rowan, his brother, they've got a big F100 that's all decked out in the back, and that, what great customer service. They go to all the races. They look after their customers. Their customers are all very loyal, and their boats are just so well known throughout the boat racing community for reliability and going super fast. So, and if they do have a problem, they're on site to help their customers. So you can't ask for, and they don't get paid for that. Unless the customer literally needs to buy something or get some work done. Like, they are just there literally to help their customers. It's bloody good service.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And for Brad, he's also heading up, I think, next week, or I think he's heading up this week actually. He's going to head up to South Australia because he's running the Bronze Aussie.
Yes, on the salt flats. Yeah, so that's another thing that those boys get involved in as well. So, very clever boys, and do some cool stuff. They live a good life.
Yeah. Do you reckon it'll reach 300 mile an hour?
Oh, I don't know.
It's been close.
I hope so. Yeah,
I think
it'd
it
be
was
cool.
I think it was at 274 before it stopped.
Pretty fast. Pretty fast. Unbelievable, isn't it?
And it's had a lot of work go back into it to try and get back out, so hopefully it does go well.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed for the Nankas boys. Yeah, in the car world. Yeah, absolutely.
Have you had any mentors or?
Yeah, like with any racing, mate, you look up to certain people that do what you do. I looked at a lot of outboard drivers over the years, Steve Thompson, Ian Tricker, a guy named Alan Speedy, who was the guy that sort of got me into the sport. Always had a lot of respect for those guys. And you learn from those guys too. I was probably the annoying young bloke running around looking at their propellers and asking questions, and that's where you learn, so there's always people along the way that help you. I've had, in water ski racing, it's a team sport, so we have skiers and we have an observer and we have a driver. I've been so lucky to have the skiers that I've had. I've had basically my adopted son, Bo Duggan, skiing for me. We won Australian titles with Bo. We won an Australian title with his brother Reese. I've had Gary Butterworth, my observer, for many, many years, and Gary and I just click. We work together well in the boat, and he's just a ripper bloke, knows the game inside out, very calm. Which it's a bit like a rally car, I suppose. It's probably the only thing you can equate it to. You've got to have that communication between the both of you. I've had Eddie Bosjanczyk in the boat, who's a gun observer, very annoying bloke out of the boat, but very good in the boat. Funniest bloke you'll ever race with. So Adam Kahn is another one. So I've had all these wonderful teams around me the whole time, and I've never been the best driver, I've never had the fastest boat, but I think as a team, as a collective, we've always been really strong and really competitive because of the people around me. So it's the old adage, surround yourself with good people, you won't go wrong.
Yeah, definitely. And it is important to have a great relationship with your observer or just your whole team.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you're going to work together and move forward.
Yeah, 100%. And your mechanic. So, probably my best mate, Simon Ishwood, owns Race Marine behind us here. I worked there for a number of years, and without Simon, none of that would have happened. He's been that generous, his knowledge has been invaluable. I taught him a lot about ski racing, he taught me a lot about boats in general because he's an offshore powerboat racer by profession, I guess you'll say. He wasn't in ski racing until he got into the race marine business and it involved ski racing. So I was able to help him, point him a little bit in the right direction with ski racing stuff because that's where I came from. But without him, and I drove that particular boat there with Simon's boat, and I used to drive that for him, and I ended up buying it off him in the end. But to be asked to drive for effectively a factory team, which doesn't happen in the boat world. You know, it happens in cars all the time, but in the boat world, there's no factory drivers. I was probably the only one in the country, and that was, yeah, it's an honour. You know, you feel privileged that someone would actually pick you to do that. So you obviously didn't realise how bad I was at it.
Well, you must not have been that bad if he wanted to keep you going for a whole season or more, maybe.
Yeah, I drove it for him for 3 seasons, and we won the big 3. So unlimited outboard, we won Formula 2 outboard and modified outboard 3 years in a row, all 3 categories. So we had just a beautiful boat and a great team. It was really good fun. Winning's good fun, mate.
And it looks really nice.
It's a cool boat, yeah. That's a V7 Velocity, so built out of a CNC cut foam plug, fully resin infused. So the composite guys in the car world would understand. They're a fully resin infused foam core boat, no timber in them at all, perfectly straight because they were made by a computer, and super fast. That boat was very light. It weighed 330 kilos at 21 foot long.
Really?
So big boat, very light, yeah.
It looks huge. And where was that at?
That's at Lake Charm, actually, that photo. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's Big Eddie sitting in the seat, the annoying one.
But you know, you've obviously done a lot of racing in your time. Have you got much coming up this year?
Yeah, just car stuff at the moment. So we're in the middle of the boat season, so I've been doing a lot of commentary. We've been down at Wyndham Harbour. Unfortunately, I've got a date clash next weekend. I'm racing the Austin at Rob Roy. There's an offshore powerboat race at Geelong, so I've had to get my mate Andrew Murphy stepping in to commentate for me down there. The offshore then moves up north, so we'll be up at Harvey Bay and Lake Macquarie for offshore for the next 2 rounds. And yeah, of course we've got Robinvale this weekend, Southern 80 next weekend, Mildura 100 at Easter time in Mildura. And yeah, a few other bits and pieces. I'm going to Sydney Motorsport Park, which I've never been to. You might be able to give me a few tips about that one.
Never been there.
Haven't you either? Yeah, so I'm taking the Datsun up there the end of next month. So that's why I've got to get this camshaft in.
Maybe I'll tag along.
You can if you want, mate. There's always a spare seat. I need a crew member.
Yeah.
Probably need someone to tell me how to drive properly too.
Oh, I'm not the best for that, but I can give it a crack. I think my Alfa Romeo 90, looks very similar. So what year was that?
That's 1981.
81, mine's 86.
Cool car. Very cool car. You should get out on the track and have a play.
You can go wheel to wheel.
Yeah, well, I don't know, mate. You might be a bit quick for me.
So what's going on back here? We've got the Webbers.
Yeah, so that's the 2-litre engine I mentioned before. So I'm just in the, probably get a shot. We've just, I need the sandpaper in there. Just building up a couple of 45mm DCOE Webbers. We've just had all the bodies cleaned up and just about to put them back together, and then we'll pop the 2-litre engine in. But it's gone on the back burner because I broke a rocker in the little, well, I didn't break it, I've worn it out, as you can see there. It's all lumpy, so that's the job before Sydney, to put a new set of those in. So and the poor old carburetors have gone on the back burner at the moment. That's our new Crow camshaft out of Mancurvis Performance that we're popping in it as well. So yeah, just keep spending money, that's what I do. Yeah.
Well, I mean, when we got our engine rebuilt, we took it up to Bendigo Dyno Tuning.
Yes.
So he's out at Juniton, Paul there. He's really good with carbies, and yeah, he helped us dyno tune our car, and we got the results that we were looking for. So yeah, he was a great help to us.
Fantastic. The next round, when's the next round for you in the Formula 4, in Formula V?
We're at Winton on, I think it's May. April 23rd, I reckon.
Oh, okay. Yep. I think that's the weekend I'm in Sydney, so we'll have to both we'll be missing out on that. Oh, well, hopefully we both win, mate. Yeah.
You should definitely bring it up there to the Petters Sprints at Winton, because it's all about consistent lap times. It's not about who's quickest, it's about who's closest.
It's a regularity style event, yeah? Yeah, okay. Well, that's what we basically do with that car, so. You and I'll talk about that. The fans don't want to hear us talking about that. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, it's getting boring. We don't want to hear about that. What advice would you give to your 16-year-old self?
I've heard you ask this before. I like the question. It's a good one. What advice would I give him? I grew up wanting to do nothing but race, and I probably should have bought a house a lot earlier in life. But having said that, I don't think it it was to my detriment in the end. Like, we got there in the end, I suppose. So, I don't know what advice I'd give myself, to be honest. I think what I've done, I probably would do again, probably with a few little tweaks and changes. But generally, no, pretty happy with the way we approach. I wish I bought a house when I was 20 and just put tenants in it and forgot about it. Because my mate Timmy did that, and he now owns a $2 million house in Glen Waverley, and he owns it. So yeah, maybe just buy a little investment and have it going on the side, then go racing. Definitely go racing though.
Yeah, definitely go racing.
Definitely go racing. Don't let me talk anyone out of that. Absolutely. It's look, you know, the reality is, I mean, you know, they say, don't they say, get your kids into racing, they won't be able to afford drugs.
Exactly.
So you know, it's you know, it's more than that. And you'll be learning this yourself. It's the places you go, it's the people you're hanging out with, the people you meet, the friends that you make. You can't buy that stuff. And you know, here I'm 53 years old. I've been racing since I was 23, and been around it since long before that. You know, there'd be any number of 10 people I could ring up tomorrow if I was in trouble, and they'd all help you out. You know, in any way you needed. So that's what you really earn out of racing, the relationships. You can't buy that stuff.
Yeah, you meet a lot of great people when you race, and I'll be honest though, sometimes you do meet some really horrible people too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and don't worry, I've got a list. And I'm sure they've got a list with me on it as well. But yeah, you know, it's people are people, they always will be.
And there's not much you can do, but oh well.
Just be true to yourself, mate. Just be honest. It's all you can do. Say what you think. If you're wrong, put your hand up and say I was wrong. That's all you can ever do in life. And yeah, you know, you'll go a long way.
Yeah, my dad will replay that moment that you just said. Admit you're wrong.
Sorry, Dad.
I'm wrong.
Yes, yeah, we've all been wrong. Everyone's been wrong. It's just those the big men are the ones that can admit it.
Yeah. And well, I've got to say you've had quite an amazing career, and you know, when I thought about your response from, you know, the question, what would you change? If I was you, I wouldn't change anything. I reckon you've done alright.
Well, the only thing I would change is I'd probably try not to crash a couple of crashes that I've had, because I've broken my neck, my back, I've broken this leg twice. So and that was probably the biggest story of my career that we probably didn't really touch on. Was we qualified #1 for the Australian team, which was really cool. We got the green jacket to represent Australia. We went to France. We shipped that boat actually to France, Vichy in France in 2019. And the World Championships are run over 4 one-hour races, so they're pretty intense. A lot of boats out there, very rough water, held on the Allier River in Vichy in the middle of France. And we raced. Our boat probably didn't suit the conditions as well as some of the European boats, and one of the Australian teams had a European boat, which they did really well. They ended up winning. I struggled, but we were still running second. And so you do your 4 races, you drop one, so it's, you know, you drop your worst round. Well, in the last 6 minutes of the final race, I barrel rolled the boat, broke my leg, ended up stuck under the boat. Was able to drop that race and still end up second at the World Championship. So got the medal, but unfortunately broke my femur pretty badly through the top here, and that was a trip home straight to the Epworth, and got all put back together, and that was a. You know, it's probably still not right now, but it was a good, 12-month probably recovery. So that was, and look, to be honest, at the end of that, I felt like I didn't enjoy the whole week, which is a real shame, because it had become that intense. It had become that people are relying on you. When that sort of money's being spent, I mean, they probably tipped in over $100,000 to get that boat over to France and get it back in, and people relying on you. A little bit of the fun went out of that, so that would be one bit of advice: is don't ever let the fun go out of it. Always enjoy it, because 90% of us aren't going to be Shane Van Gisbergen and get paid to do this stuff. Hopefully you are. I'll never be. So if you're not getting a good time out of it, then then there's no point. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you speaking to me today, Dave. You've given me a lot of insight, and I think we've done really well today, considering I've never done much like this. I've done a few interviews where I've walked around and talked to people, but nothing really like this. So.
Oh, cool.
I
Thanks,
appreciate
mate. No, it's awesome. Make sure that people jump on the Hose Down podcast. As soon as they've finished listening to Grassroots Racer, straight onto the Hose Down.
Yep.
Mine aren't as good as his, but no, you're doing a great job, and your parents should be very proud, because when you first messaged me, I didn't realise you're only 15, eh?
Yep.
15. Not too many 15-year-olds are capable of doing what you're doing, mate, so well done.
Well, thank you, Dave, and thanks everyone for watching. Head over to the Hose Down podcast.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed tonight's podcast. It was something a bit different, me speaking to a guest in person, but I did really enjoy it. So thanks to Dave. And remember, if you are racing this weekend, if you just did Robinvale or you're heading up to the Southern 80 especially, drive fast and take chances safely, of course.